Hello, my name is Jacob Stidham, and I'm here to present the country case study final presentation. So the agenda for this presentation is an introduction of the study, an introduction of the focus country, present issues in that country, comparisons and practices, and then finally the conclusion. So let's get started. So, introduction-wise, so the premise of the presentation, throughout the course of the semester, we have taken a look at global perspectives in education and its relation to our country. We have looked at different concepts such as competition and sharing of knowledge, all for the benefit of how our system works. This presentation is a culmination of learning and the application of it in order to gain insight into the inner workings of other countries and how we could further improve our own education system. So the purpose of this research was to conduct a case study on another country and their education system, look at efforts in that country to integrate technology into schools, the benefits and or barriers the country has faced, and then how practices and or failures could benefit our home county, which is Montgomery County Public Schools. So the focus country is Bulgaria. So a little bit of background on the country. It's an Eastern European country in the midst of the Baltics. It has 6.4 million people. It has a long history with innovation and technology in the region. Is a current member of both the European Union and United Nations, and is considered a leader in innovation and technology in Southeastern Europe. Its history with the ICT initiatives. Throughout the Cold War, so the 1940s and 1970s, Bulgaria becomes part of the Soviet Union and is a major center of innovation and technology for it. In the 80s, Bulgaria begins to integrate technology such as computers into society, including schools, in order to help their population become more tech savvy. Unfortunately for them, in 1990, the Soviet Union begins to collapse and Bulgaria breaks away and forms a new government. As a result of this, a multitude of professionals begin leaving the Soviet Union, including ICT specialists, which leaves the country very barren for specialists in this area. It wouldn't be until the 2000s where a new generation of specialists emerge, and in a way they start to see a renaissance of ICT companies and groups within the country. As of today, it is considered the Silicon Valley of Southeastern Europe. As you can see, its numbers have been growing in terms of companies and workers. Even though it's on the rise, though, it's still ranked as one of the poorest countries in the EU. It has one of the lowest level of GDP per capita in the EU, and the government, and as a result of all this, the government has begun to initiate ICT initiatives in multiple sectors, even in education. The education system is mostly controlled by the upper government. However, the local schools on the school level are the ones who really have the real oversight and control over things. Very autonomous. As a result, it's ranked 30 out of 40 for developed countries. Most education rankings are below the EU average, and some major issues they have include lack of educator PD and pay, financial resources, lack of modernized facilities, and then a lack of equity and focus on student services. In order to solve this, they have initiated Digital Bulgaria 2025 national program, which is in order to modernize and widespread implementation of intelligent IT solutions in all areas of the economy and social life by creating an environment for widespread use of information and communication technologies, new technologies for businesses and citizens, uniform standards, and a high level of network and information security and interoperability. Its 6 priority goals essentially is to establish conditions for the development and access of digital networks and services, developing a digital economy with growth, enhancement of digital competence and skills, ensuring effective and high-quality public e-services for businesses and the government, promoting a secure cyber ecosystem, addressing the challenges of cybersecurity, and internet governance. And as a result of these goals, education is seen as a major foundation in this plan in order to educate and implement these services with the population. As a result, the impact on Bulgarian schools. The main objectives with education is modernization of school and higher education in the field of ICT, increase the number of highly qualified specialists in the field of ICT, and then improving the digital and ICT skills of the workforce. This will lead to changes in schools such as improved student performance, modernized facilities and equipment, improved funding for schools, improvements to professional development and salaries, and restructured curriculums based on project-based learning and technology use. So very similar goals and changes that the U.S. seeks to implement as well. Unfortunately, this has led to a lot of pressing issues that are currently being addressed. Even though implementations have been occurring, progress has been very slow the last few years. Improvements to scores has slowly been occurring, but the country is still falling behind, and the current challenges have stalled progress in studies, have mentioned the need for universal standards and other necessary improvements. The first challenge was a lack of digital literacy. According to educators, from a survey conducted in a study, educators were very positive, but the survey found that educators also had a very low digital competency. They also found that students were also having low digital competencies as well, even though there are implementations in line. Educators and students have very little experience with technology and low digital literacy skills. There also seems to be a lack of professional development, which contributes to low knowledge and integration of tech by educators, which also leads to less tech integration and use in the classroom. So overall, there seems to be a lack of knowledge on the integration and use of technology. The second challenge, lack of up-to-date technology and facilities. It was found that a very, very low percent of the population had access to internet in schools, let alone the proper equipment and technology needed in order to incorporate technology, such as Web 2.0 and even laptops in general, into schools. So even though schools have been updated, most of them still lack basic tech integration. A lot of this stems from the issues that the equipment is not in the schools, or it's old equipment that doesn't work very well. And then obviously the lack of PD and tech knowledge makes the situation even worse. Challenge number 3, lack of finances and government support. Again, Bulgaria is one of the poorest nations in the EU. It lacks funding for most of its programs, especially when it comes to education. Also, schools have full autonomy over the budget and may not prioritize tech integration as a result. And then, not only are national laws lacking uniformity, Bulgarian schools also have to follow EU regulations. And all these challenges are backed up by the 2 interviews I conducted during the semester. So Mr. Van Swoel verified all 3 of these issues. He did verify that a large contingent of the non-international staff, especially older members, had difficulty using the most basic technology such as Google. He also verified that there's a lack of up-to-date tech facilities, even though electricity issues are rare. When they do have a lot of other issues with the facilities, it tends to last for days, making it difficult to use things at times. And then finally, he did mention that EU laws make it very difficult to implement new technology, especially Web 2.0 programs, because they lack certain compliances that the EU requires. The Baldwin interview also validated a lot of this as well. Baldwin confirmed that there is a lack of good equipment in the school. Most of the Chromebooks and other devices are really old, and it can be difficult for students and teachers to get work done and to try new things. He also heard that from other colleagues in other schools that there is not really a lot of funding for technology in their schools, let alone resources for new technology and training. So these interviews really do corroborate what was gleaned from research. Now, comparisons and practices. Even though the issues vary in certain degrees, these are very similar issues that our county and Montgomery County Public Schools also have. So technology is accessible, but equipment is usually handed down from student to student. It's not the greatest quality tech either. Professional development is rare for technologies, and teachers usually have to figure out their own things. And then government regulations can create obstacles and issues for the county and schools as well. So some best practices going forward that both the county and Bulgaria can use. They both need to increase the amount of PD for technology. You need to kind of establish a foundation in order to grow that digital literacy and tech use. They also need to make sure equipment is not only up to date, but better quality so that it doesn't break down often or not work on a regular basis. And then both can reevaluate their curriculums and regulations, or at least find ways for teachers to follow them and still have the ability to integrate technology, or at least make it easier to do so. It is important for student global awareness because educators need to also connect with each other as well as students and learn from their schools. As we've seen in this case study, they have very similar issues. And, students need to know how the U.S. can relate to these countries in terms of these issues. And by learning from each other, we can learn and work together to help solve similar issues and create solutions. And this improves the global community as a whole and brings mutual understanding and cooperation. In conclusion, though at different points of progress, the U.S. has similar issues as Bulgaria. And by learning and working together from each other's trials and failures, both countries can overcome these issues and improve education for their students. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Here are the references.